Since the education is on the concurrent list subject to entry 66 in the Union List of Constitution, this gives exclusive legislative power to the central government for coordination and determination of the standards in institution of higher education on research and scientific and technical institutions. As a result, the state-wise purpose of higher education offers is supplanted by individual institutional interest. The present regulatory system in higher education is flawed in many respects. Some of these are: the barriers to entry in education are too high. The system of authorizing entry is cumbersome for establishing institutions. And there are extensive rules after entry, from fees to curriculum, as the UGC seeks to regulate almost every aspect of an institution. The system is also based on patently irrational principles. The other regulators, say in the sphere of professional education, are often inconsistent in their adherence to the principles. These would only confirm that the complexity and multiplicity and the rigidity of the existing regulatory structure is not conducive to the expansion of the higher education opportunities in India. All this discussion leads to us to conclude that there is a clear need to establish an independent regulatory authority for higher education. Instead of 10, 12 multiple agencies, there should be one only. Such a regulatory authority is both necessary and desirable. The same is necessary on several counts. We have regulatory authorities on telecommunication. We have on stock market. Similar authority can be established for Indian higher education also. There is a need to create enough universities in India, and for doing that, it requires an act of legislature of parliament to set up a university. We have just about 300 odd universities in India, and they are just growing because we can't establish enough universities. The size keeps on increasing by enrolling large number of students, and the control becomes very difficult. The deemed university route which is available is too difficult for new institutions, because this can be done only through the act of parliament, and which is very a formidable barrier for anyone to go. The consequences is a steady increase in the average size of existing universities with a steady deterioration in their quality. The absence of competition only compounds problem. We are not allowed to establish foreign universities in India in the current form. Maybe in the future we can see some of the universities coming to India. As we seek to expand the higher education system, anti-norms will be needed for private institutions and public-private partnerships. There are rules and regulations, but these are inconsistent. Some days there is some rule, other days these are overcome, they are changed overnight without being circulated properly. So the institutional framework for this purpose must be put in place here and now. Finally, we have forgotten that higher education is an important investment for the state and the nation. And higher education is the ticket to a good job and economic security for our future generation to come. With these remarks, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. You have very beautifully narrated the lead role taken by the private institutions in the field of higher education, and you have also beautifully stated the little bit lacuna left on the part of the state. And now, with the permission of our Sessions Chairman, my Lord Justice Rathore, I now invite Mr. P.C. Jogiraju. He is President of Kranti Society for Rural Development, to share his views before the gathering. Mr. P.C. Jogiraju, please.
Justice Rathore ji and other dignitaries on the dais, learned members sitting in the auditorium, and friends, I feel proud to be associated with you today, and I share my views on the right to higher education and responsibilities of state. The right of education is a fundamental human right. I quote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 26, which says, Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. The world has become a global village with the emergence of globalization and economic reforms. People are confronted with literally the world of opportunities. College education assumes major importance in the developing countries in the race to keep up the global standards. The United Nations governments and educationists are emphasizing the crucial importance of education. It is unfortunate that no concrete action is being taken. We find poverty, lack of adequate number of educational institutions, and general apathy and preventing deserving the but economically disadvantaged students who aspire for higher education. The steeply rising cost of higher education is taking it out of reach of the middle, lower class, and poor children. It is sad but true that these children will be unable to realize their true potential and the nation loses the bright talent of the poverty. Everyone will agree to the fact that India is among the fast growing developed countries with a booming economy powered by a rapidly growing services sector. India is undoubtedly the powerful house when it comes to IT. But do you know that India's per capita spending on the education sector is among the lowest in the world? Even though the government of India has budgeted 150% increase compared to 2,550 crores than the previous year. In fact, remains that India lags significantly behind the nation countries' counterparts in the country. Presently, government spending higher education for each student in India stands only $400, which is expected to improve around $1,000. Accordingly, the figures released by United Nations Education and Scientific and Cultural Organization at rupees $400. India had the lowest public expenditure on higher education per student among the developing and developed countries. In comparison, United States spends 9,629 US dollars and United Kingdom spends 8,502 US dollars and Japan is spending 4,830 US dollars on higher education per student. I would like to make a few suggestions as a humble Indian citizen who is deeply interested in the future of our great nation on the world stage. I suggest first that every corporate house set aside significant amounts to sponsor the fees and living expenses of the few brilliant students hailing from poor and economic background, in the same way as is being done for sports personalities, so that deserving students could succeed and be an asset to the nation. A major worry today is the lack of proper infrastructure and basic amenities in the institutions of learning. I would suggest that the government must take it up on a war footing and ensure that basic amenities are provided at all places, particularly in rural areas. Equal opportunities should be provided to students in rural areas as in the case of their counterparts in the major cities and towns. This would encourage the lot of talents coming from small places. Further, it would also encourage other talented boys and girls from remote corners of the country to come forward. We are aware that education is an important measuring tool to assess the country's progress in improving the quality of life. It is also the key to economic development of the individual and the nation as a whole. Education instills in the citizens an awareness of their rights and responsibilities, which is essential for achieving the goals of equality and peace. The unwelcome growth of crime and terrorism is largely a result of our failure to provide proper education and guidance to live a fulfilling life. The phenomenon of globalization has presented India with a great opportunity to enhance the employment potential of educated youth. India has profited from the outsourcing, call center booms, and is a major beneficiary in terms of employment opportunities. There is a flip side to it. However, while it solves the problem of gainful employment, it also snatches a bright talent who could have participated in scientific development of country. Today, the younger generation, as soon as they complete their graduation or even intermediate, in certain cases, find immediate gainful employment in BPOs and KPOs. They also receive the boggling amounts as salaries and incentives. This has attracted many youth to abandon further studies and join these organizations so that they could improve the economic conditions of their families. I believe that when such people join the call center community, we are losing a valuable scientist, engineer, or technocrat. This is definitely not a good sign for the future where we consider the problems facing the nation. I predict that in the not so far future, there will be a tremendous depth of scientists, astronomers, and in other major professional fields. This would create enormous hurdles and become a stumbling block for development, leaving us still far behind the developed countries. The only way to arrest this trend is to provide some economic relief to the families of those who are capable in involving themselves in major research and studies. Otherwise, our younger generation would become victim of present-day trends and forget the nation's progress. The need of the hour is to identify the talent, provide them proper relief in the form of fellowship or scholarships, and encourage them to study more and involve themselves in major studies and research for development of the country. Colleagues, nowadays the colleges and universities in India are underfunded, and the investments in libraries, information technology, classrooms, and laboratories are not sufficient and are major hindrance for the quality of education. With less remuneration compared to software industry, it has become very difficult to get good teachers and administrators for teaching professions. Another point of concern is that phenomenon of brain drain, that of the brightest engineering and scientists of India immediately after graduating from institutions like IITs, they are leaving the country to study for their higher degrees abroad, look for lucrative jobs and settle there. The multinational companies offering unheard of handsome remuneration grab most of the rest. This trend needs to be arrested. If not, the state would be spending a lot of money on the education of these students who ultimately become the asset of foreign countries and multinational companies. And India, there are none to work for the development of the country. As stated earlier, to compete in the global economy, the quality of higher education becomes highly important compared to other countries like China and some of the other East Asian countries. We are all heavily investing in improving their best universities with the aim of making them internationally competitive research universities. India is being perhaps lagging behind in this area, as this needs to be addressed on top priority basis. The government has no doubt identified some of the institutions and programs of national prominence, but unfortunately they are not being supported to the extent needed. While it is the responsibility of the state to shoulder the burden of resolving the pressing problem, it is also necessary that Indians from all walks of life take steps to initiate action in this direction. After all, in a democratic country like India, the government must govern as belonging of the people, by the people, and for the people. Hence, apart from the state, other heads of the educational institutions, teachers, parents, non-government organizations should involve themselves more actively in the education